one of the main reasons why I thought it'd be interesting for Adam to come is when I was listening to Ihklaq's start-off lecture, he talked a little bit about purpose and goals and how important that is. And Adam has also been a speaker for the Newton Distinguished Innovator Lecture Series at UC Berkeley. And one of the things that he talked about was verbally stated goals. And as you all are going off and furthering your careers and thinking about life, I thought that hearing what Adam has to say about verbally stated goals and the impact on his life and what he's done would be a great way to start it off. So Adam, if you don't mind, could you talk a little bit about the importance of that and what it's done in your life?
Sure. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to meet you and learn about you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So verbally stated goals, it's something I came up with right when I graduated school, undergraduate, for the first time. And looking back on my life and career, it's been the single greatest tool that's furthered, success in my life. So I'll share it with you. It starts with the philosophy that the life that we have, the time that we have here in the world, is the most valuable thing we have. I have no idea what comes next, but I know that being here is a gift, and the only real sin is to waste the time we have on this earth. So then the question is, how do you maximize your life? How do you maximize the value of this gift? And so I thought about it, and I said, well, life is kind of like a book, and every book has chapters. All right, you're not the same person the whole way through. You're going to evolve and have different needs, different goals, different wishes and requirements, and so you're going to change. And at each point in time, at each chapter change, I go through this process and I try to focus on what is this next chapter about. So my first chapter was when I graduated school. I'm like, what do I do? I should get a job, but doing what and where? And I had different job opportunities. And at that time, I had grown up on the East Coast, never really been anywhere. And my grandfather could walk down the street and speak 7 or 8 languages. And he seemed so worldly to me. And that became an emotion. I wanted a piece of my grandfather in me. And so I made my first verbally stated goal, foreign perspective. So the first thing is, I had no idea how to accomplish that goal. But I said, this is something I want to do. I want to have that in me. So this was a big help in decision making. So at this core time where I had all this confusion, I focused on the core emotion I was feeling. What do I need? What do I desire? And this was the answer. I crystallized it into words that captured that emotion in my heart. And then I verbalized it. What's the verbal part of verbally stated goal? I told everyone I met that this is what I was going to do, even if I had no idea how I was going to do it. And by telling people, this does 2 things. One is it commits you to this goal. You tell people every week, every day, hundreds of people that you're going to achieve this goal. You're like, man, I better get working on that, because I know at the end of the next holiday party, they're going to say, how'd that thing work out for you? So it's a commitment, and just the force of putting the words into the world kind of now makes you believe, makes you commit to this.
You're kind of using, I swear, I didn't do that. Hold on. You're kind of using social peer pressure to your advantage. You designed it that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You make yourself.
Yeah.
Now I'm in it. I said I was going to do it. I better do it. The second thing it does is people start to help you. You tell enough people I'm going to do this, they'll say, oh, I know this guy. I have this idea. Why don't you try this? And somehow the universe will help you achieve this goal. And so my view is when you're in a chapter, when you're happy in life and you're content, write it out. Because, just make it as great as it can be. Appreciate the moment. Enjoy it. But when you're coming to a chapter change and you're not happy, for some reason, you need something, maybe you just got married, now you have this, I should have money, maybe you just had a child, I need to do this, maybe, you are a different person, so focus on the emotion, make a change, and do that by focusing on what words capture that emotion, and then start telling people, I'm going to do this. And I've used that all the way through my entire life, and it's been a huge, huge tool for me.
Do people ever, when you use this process, people ever change, give you suggestions to change the goal? Do they ever say, oh, that's nice, but you know what? Wouldn't it be better if you would do this?
They do, but I don't listen to them. No, but for me, really it is about, and it takes me a while to come up with one of those, but it's about finding your truth, like your true need. And it's very core, it's very chest. It's right here, it's in your heart, and then you express it, and when it becomes true, it resonates with you. So usually the goal is not, they'll say, hey, why don't you try France instead of England or something like that.
Yeah.
But at the core thing that's so important to you at that moment of life, for me, I've never said, oh, you're right, that's a stupid goal, throw that out and I'll start a new one. So that hasn't happened for me at least.
So I really like it, and obviously it's very successful because it's worked well for you. And I'll just give you some supporting points. One is, I've seen speakers that we've invited before, and I'm thinking Yoki Matsuoka, is that how you say it? Yeah, she was CTO of Nest, and in Google, and we had invited her as a speaker, and you're talking about chapters of your life. She actually gave the entire talk as chapters of her life. I mean, like she had chapter 1, what school was like, chapter 2. So I think other successful people also have adopted kind of this framework of thinking this way. And I think also that this idea of kind of telling people, I'm going to say the idea, or and you're making it kind of very central to you, which I can comment on separately. The part about being very central or from your heart, to me, the way I interpret that is it's coming from pattern matching, subconscious pattern matching. So instead of the logic or something else affecting your logic, you're basically, when you just feel that something is right, that means the part of your brain that doesn't affect your logical speech is finding this pattern, and it's giving you like a match feeling, right? Okay, anyway, so there's a reason why you're feeling that, and but I think entrepreneurial people do a version of this also, which is not necessarily this thing from their heart, but it can be. But then whatever this insight they have or whatever it is, they tend to tell a lot of people, and just as you're saying, they tell people, and those people will say, oh, that's a good idea, or they won't like it or whatever, but the ones who like it, they will help them. So that's the same, that you're building your ecosystem of people that would support it. But in the entrepreneurial case, I was thinking that people actually do tell you that won't work because of this or that, and when you hear that, you actually also adjust a little bit. And so that's why I was asking the question, do you only get supporters, or do you also use it to navigate the actual path or idea?
Oh yeah, so my goals are usually so big and global, certainly. So I'll give you a few of them just to give you an idea of what would this be like. And as I told you, I have no idea how I'm going to get there, right? So the path to the goal, it's not I'm going to do this startup and we're going to build this thing, but that's not it at all. It's big honking goal. And so people will tell me, I'll say, well, my best guess of how to get there might be this. They'll say, oh, I don't think that'll work, try this. And I'll be, oh, you're right, I'll try that. So there's a lot of pathfinding, but planting the flag out there, that is important. So I'll just run through my story of my life in chapters. It's not like I was at this school. First one was foreign perspective. I wanted to travel, see the world, and learn a language and be a bit more worldly, because I had only grown up in one place. Second one was, I want to learn again in California, go California schools. So I was bored in my job. That was the core feeling. I loved my job, but I was like, I'm not learning anything. I'm bored. I'm telling everybody. So I yearned to learn, and I dreamed of that faraway golden place. So I applied down to every school down the coast, including Berkeley, and said, but I only want to come for 9 months. I need to do a master's degree, a 3-year program in 9 months. Will you let me try? UCLA was the only one who said, yeah, no one's done that before. Fastest ever was 18 months or something, but sure, give it a try. And so I went to UCLA. The next one was, where could I stay for 10 years and not get bored? I thought, I loved my job in France when I got my foreign perspective, but it was, after a while I kind of knew everything. I wasn't growing, I wasn't learning, and I thought I needed a career. My dad had stayed at one job this whole time, and I'm old too, so back then my dad joined one company and stayed there his whole life, right? I'm like, I need that. And what kind of place could that be? It was a really big open question. One of them was, can I fall in love? Is love real, or is it just this mythical hoax? Is it real for some people but not for others? Maybe is it real for me? Could it be real for me? I had lots of girlfriends but never truly felt like I was in love. That's a big goal. I have no idea how to get there, but I want to know the answer. And probably one of them was, after finding love and getting married, I said, well, now I want to have enough money to buy a house and have a child. Both seemed, in the Bay Area, completely out of my reach. I was making, I think, $70,000 or $80,000. I was proud. I had no debt from college, so $25K in the bank. But my house would have cost $1 million, the house I was renting. I didn't even like the house. Where am I going to get $1 million? Right? There's a goal. How can I do that? And probably my most important career goal.
When you were originally on the East Coast?
Yes.
And then when did you come to California? For college, right? So
graduated undergraduate, foreign perspective, 4 years in France.
Okay.
Loved my job but got bored. Want to learn again in California.
Okay.
9 months at UCLA. Where can I stay for 10 years and not get bored? I went to SRI International, which for computer scientists was a playground because they had virtual reality and AI and robots and speech recognition and every plaything you could imagine. I stayed there actually more than 10 years, never got bored. So all the way through. And from then there's a number. One of them was, how do breakthroughs happen? I thought that was important. I've been in academia, big companies, small companies. I'm like, how could that happen? So I led the largest AI project in US history, government-funded AI project, $250 million over 5 years. Up to 400 of the top universities, including Berkeley, worked on this project. And I was leading technology to build this machine learning system that could learn in the wild and be your assistant. And that's not the way breakthroughs happen.
That's what I was going to ask you, actually. So after all of that, what's your and you can continue on with the kind of assertions, but like what to do next. But how do breakthroughs happen? What did you discover there?
I found the answer. It's true. It's the startup. It's an entrepreneur. That's my belief. I've been at big companies. I've been at other people's startups. I've been in research. I've been in academia. Some of the best companies in the world. I believe that the greatest change agent in the world is the startup, and I can tell you why. It's because of two things. One is a startup has to be crazily ambitious. You cannot start a new little company to say, I'm just going to do a tiny little incremental improvement over the state of the art. Because big companies can do that better than you. They have more money, more resources, more customers, more distribution. So you have to plant the flag far. And you'd be like, well, can't researchers do that? They go after hard stuff and plant the flag really far and do ambitious things. Yes, they do. But startups, you have to raise money, go to some investors, you pitch your idea, they give you $1 million or whatever it is, and the money that they give you translates into the number of days until you die. Plain and simple. No, it's true, it's a runway, right? You spend this every day on salaries or what have you. You can calculate exactly how many days you have left, and if you don't produce value in that time, you're done. You go out of business, you fold. But if you do produce more value than you spend, you can raise a next round of money at a higher valuation and all is well. So it's this forced both combination of ambition and desperate focus on producing value in this short or fixed amount of time. Because you get to choose how much time you need, because you decide how much money to take. But that combination for me is how breakthroughs happen. In my opinion.
How much of the breakthrough happens while you're pitching and up till the point when you get funds, and how much happens after you got the funds and you discover something that you didn't realize while you were telling the story of what you were going to do?
So it's more about, in my view, so I have a friend and a colleague who wrote a book on this subject. His name is Norman Winarski. And in this, he wrote a chapter on which is more important, the idea or the execution. And I don't actually agree with his assertion. So I'm curious. So we'll do a quick poll. So take something like Siri, or take whatever amazing breakthrough that's exciting to you. How many people think it's the idea, the positioning, the concept that's the important thing? How many people think it's the execution? So we'll say idea people. Everyone raise a hand. We'll just get a feel. Nobody. How many people think it's the execution side? All right. Well, I agree with this room, actually. No, it's true. Norman took the other. So I think when
He's got to be like the only person. And he's the one who wrote the book, apparently.
Well, yeah, and I think there are different ways, and I'm not
you know,
gonna say,
it does come down to how you define execution, though. So, like somewhere in the definition, you might end up with with a different answer.
So I guess what I would say is, like, take academia. I worked in research lab for more than a decade, and the thing about a scientist sitting in their office working on a great idea over time is they kind of get to choose their own corners to cut. You get to define your own problem. You're like, well, the whole doing it for real is too, I don't have the money or the time for that, so I'm going to cut off this corner and this corner and this corner, and I'll do this core piece. But in a startup, you have to actually put something out into the real world, and your customers and people will tell you if that works or not. So they get to define what corners can't be cut. And that's why I think the true innovation, it's great to have an idea and positioning and strategy. It's so important, particularly to raising your money and getting co-founders, and there's a lot around the marketing and idea, but once you have the money, the real work begins, and that's what I call execution. Everything that happens about, okay, someone actually believed us, they gave us this money because they think we can build this thing that will have this impact. Now we have to do it for real, in the real world, and that's why I think true innovation happens at a lower level. It's finding ways around the corners that can't be cut.
Is true innovation running into problems that you didn't realize and then solving those? Or is that the version that you're talking about? Like, you raised money and then you said, oh, we're going to build this thing, and then when you started to build it, you realize, oh, you can't really build it. And then, like, is that the part that's innovation? Or is it that you raised the money, you said this was the idea, and then you found out that that's not even the direction you should go, and that really what you're going to build is yet another thing, and who you're going to sell it to is yet another thing?
I think it depends for me. So I helped start Change.org, I helped start Siri. Two very different companies. With Siri, we came with an idea, a plan, we're going to do this, we're going to build this, we're going to solve these technical problems that have never been solved before, we're going to deploy it in this way, and we pretty much had straight line, did exactly what we said we would do. So there, I don't know if we got lucky, but we weren't innovating on pivots or changing the strategy. We knew what we wanted to build. We weren't sure we could build it for real. And the real work, the real innovation in that case, was in solving the technical problems that people, the real world put in front of us. Like
And were you bringing a lot with you from SRI, or were you just kind of like, there was something, it was like a parallel, but it just wasn't really the same thing, and you had to kind of start over?
We had to start over, and I think there is this trend, you talked about, I saw your innovation curves, and at SRI they talk about a curve for technology about A, B, and C phases, and there's this gap. You have the first idea, and then you get the actual mature product, but how do you get from one to another? And it's a really tricky thing. When do you throw out your old and build a new, and how do you do that? So in the Siri case, we had a rough prototype, and some ideas about how we might approach a problem, but it had to be completely redone. I'll give you an example of that about the innovation was, we had a natural language system, and you could type in all sorts of things, or speak find French restaurants in Palo Alto, and it would, and we're like, this is great. And then we said, well, we need more business names, because you might say find Il Fornaio in Palo Alto. So we loaded in 20 million business names, and we realized that the data is really dirty, like it'll be Il Fornaio Restaurant and Grill, or whatever, and no one would ever say the full name, so we're having to do fuzzy matching on 20 million words. And we realized every word in the English language is pretty much a business name. And we're doing fuzzy matching. And I remember loading in the data, we typed the word start over, which was like the base command to like just get you to a known clear state. And it said, looking for businesses named Over in Start, Mississippi. And I'm like, what just happened? And then to climb back out, our little prototype with small data and everything was working really well, you load in real world data, it was so hard to, get back to that level of understanding and accuracy once you had to deal with the real problem at scale, right? And it took lots of innovation. On the other side, I wanted to give your address, Change.org. There we go, well, it's not going to be a technology breakthrough. We have to get the right products and features that will actually make this little website into something usable. And literally, we did we knew we wanted to do a social network for social activism, positive social change. But that's a pretty big space. So we tried pretty much everything you could do. We ran the largest job board when the economy crashed. Don't go back to work and go back for a socially conscious job. We did gifting of you could gift a 1 square meter of rainforest to someone, or one cat saved from a particular place. We had a political component, so we tried every single thing you could do, and our user rates were in year 1, rounding up to the nearest million, was 1 million, year 1, 1 million, year 2, 1 million, year 3, 1 million, year 4, 1 to 10, 10 to 25, 25 to 50, 50 to 100. We're now over a quarter of a billion members. And so what did we do? We had this little petition feature, one of the millions of things we tried. And we had instrumented everything. So we were watching the data of what users did. And so we moved it a little bit more to the middle, made it a little bit more prominent, simplified. In the end, we ended up being a petition platform. That was never what we thought we were going to be or do. And so the innovation was year after year, took 5 years of trying a million different things before we found something that hit. But then it hit. And we had to innovate even once we knew petitions. How do we make money? How do we earn the right to survive, right? And what's the model? So I think innovation can happen in many different ways, but like a verbally stated goal, you need to put out a big flag and tell people, like, commit to it and try different things, in the real world, be ambitious, and you have that focus of, if we don't produce value for our next stage, we die. And I think that's a great, the charm of entrepreneurship, the value of entrepreneurship.
I wanna just ask you maybe like one more question, but in the meantime, why don't you guys think about? I bet you they've got questions to ask you, but I'm debating which of all of these questions I should ask you. I didn't actually ask you any really of these, so I can pick one. Maybe you can tell me which one you want to answer. The one I actually want to ask you is, what do you spend your time doing every day? It's not one of the questions I was given. But like, everyone's got kind of like a process for what they do with their time. You're doing something with your time that seems to lead you towards success. So what do you do on a day-to-day basis that seems to work for you?
It depends at the stage and the phase that I am. So, if you think of startup, just on the business context, your 3-person startup is very different than your 15-person startup. Very different than your 25-person startup, than your 100-person, then all of a sudden you join a company and now you've got 500,000 people in the company I work for now, right? So what I do on a daily basis depends on the phase.
Okay. Fair.
In terms of tools that I use in my life, so let me pick one of my most important phases, which was a verbally stated goal, so I'll cast it in that context. I was working at SRI, leading that big AI project, and the 2 core emotions I was feeling was, number one, I was feeling stifled. I had all these ideas, and I, for political reasons, couldn't get them out into this project. A lot of reasons for that, but I was exploding with idea. We should do this, we should do that. I could not bring it about. Emotion 1. Emotion 2 was, it was research. And I was like, man, when this project's over, we're going to have 650 papers, publications. We're going to have some research code rotting in a thing. It's not going to have any impact. Those were the 2 emotions. So my verbally stated goal for 2007, and if you came to me at a Christmas party in 2006, maybe Vicky was there, I would say in 2007, I'm going to do 5 projects that can impact users in 2007. That was the verbally stated goal. 5 projects. I didn't want one. I had so many ideas. And 2008, the verbally stated goal was 1 major, 1 minor. After building 5 prototypes, I was going to take the best 2 and start them as real companies in the world and take them to impact. Now, it turned out I actually ended up starting 3 companies at the same time. Siri was my day job, Sentient was my night job, and Change.org was kind of my side project. And so it was a very, very busy time for me.
Some people would call that lack of focus.
Right. And in the exactly. And in the same way that you said, there are many different types of people who are successful. When I spoke at UCLA, I was a commencement speaker. Like, what am I going to tell all these smart people in the room? I go, I started some companies, but I was in my 40s. I had never taken an entrepreneur class or a business class. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. And if you read any entrepreneur book or class, none of them are going to say start 3 companies at the same time. They're going to say focus, focus, focus. I didn't know that. So I did it my way, and it was still successful. And so the key, I think, the same message is find your own role model, you were saying, to success. For me, it's like find your own way to success, because there are many paths. So I'm not advising anyone else try it my way, but at this time, I had a day job, a night job, and a little side project, and I wanted to still have time for family. I have a son who had homework, a wife who needs me home for dinner and weekends. I wanted to do physical sports. That's important to me, so to keep some, semblance of holding this body together. And so what I did was I designed my week.
Okay.
I designed my week. I took the calendar, I carved it out. So I started my company's Siri in San Jose. I live in Oakland. People are like, you're crazy. And it was on purpose. I would take Amtrak, a train, 1 hour every morning and every evening. So here's my schedule during that period of my life. I'm a morning person, so I'd wake up at about 5 in the morning. I'd work from 5 to, let's call Siri my A project and Sentient my B project. I'd work from 5 to 7 on my B project, 2 hours every morning. That's 10 hours. I would have 1 hour to work in the morning and evening. That was flex time. I could work on either A or B. Then I get to my day job, Siri. I'd work, from 9 to 5, roughly 9 to 5:30. Then I would come back on a train. I had flex time again. I'd get home at 7 o'clock. That was dinner time. My wife knew what time, because of the train, no traffic, knew what time I'd be home to the minute every day. Evenings was my own time, so I would have dinner, I'd relax, I'd help Noah with his homework, whatever, I'd be there. Weekends was family time, except they wake up later than I do, so I'd wake up maybe at 6, really sleep in. I would work maybe 2 hours, 6 to 8, 6 to 9. Then I would have a trainer come to help me on physical stuff Saturday morning, and then on Sunday I would do basketball, and the rest of the weekend was family time, right? So it ended up giving me kind of about 15 hours on B company time, maybe 45, 50 hours on A company time, and I had 10 hours of flex time where I could add, plus time for my family, time for my sports. And the key was I got into this rhythm. At every moment of the day, I knew what I should be working on, and it just became a habit. And so I just cranked for a couple of years, just being hyper efficient. I think like the time switching, and not being efficient with your number of hours that you have, you lose a lot of focus and efficiency. So when I wanted to be hyper efficient and get more focus done, or more productivity done, that's how I did it. Design the week so that it fits all of your goals, and then just get in a rhythm and just go, and it's a habit. You don't even think about it anymore. I don't do that today.
It's amazingly structured, and I think you probably, the idea that you designed it is like, I think very few, I think you're on one edge of the spectrum in terms of like people that can kind of logically design or put that much logic into how they live their life, which I won't comment more on that. I'm gonna I'm gonna instead open it up because you may have questions. He's been at Apple, he's been at Samsung, he's been in all these startup companies. We got representatives from those and all the other companies. What's on your mind in terms of questions? And I see people in the back room looking at their watches.
We're between them and cocktails.
Okay. Questions? What do you want to know? Can be anything. Not that he's going to answer it all, but yeah. Okay.
What's your current chapter?
What's my current chapter? So my current chapter is global impact. Comes from a core emotion. When I started Siri, we launched a free app in the App Store. 2 weeks later, you get the entrepreneur dream of, we literally received a phone call from Steve Jobs. Hey, it's Steve. What you doing? Want to come over to my house tomorrow? We're like, Steve? How'd you get this number? All right, we sold to Apple. We launched Siri. Steve Jobs died the very next day after Siri was launched. This was his last big effort, and we actually just learned a few weeks ago that his executive admin, who was with him all through the end, said that he was clinging to life to be able to see the Siri launch. Literally. That's how important it was to him. which gave me chills. We launched Siri, and after 9 months at Apple, after basically 2.5 years at Apple total, I walked away from Apple for millions of dollars, from a team I loved, from a project I cared about, because I was frustrated. And I had a vision for what I wanted Siri to be, and everyone's like, you must be so proud. I'm like, yeah, I'm very proud of what we accomplished. We changed the world's expectations in a small way, but I had Siri today is a utility. There are 1 billion plus queries that flow through it every day, but it's not important. If I were to say, I'm going to take away your web browser or your smartphone, you'd be, I can't live my life. If I said, I'm taking away your favorite assistant, whatever it might be, you'd be like, that's inconvenient. It's not the same. And Siri, for me, was meant to be so important. It would be a paradigm that every connected user and every connected business would change a significant part of the way they did computing. That was always the goal, and when I left Apple, I didn't feel I could achieve that goal at Apple. So after a little bit of time off, it was kind of a downtime emotionally for me, I said, I don't need Apple, I'm going to do it again. And that was the definition, global impact. I want to do something that will change every connected user, every connected business. And I said, I didn't care what it was, so I ended up staying along the Siri path. I had many other thoughts. I built 5 prototypes, and I was going to do one major, one minor, and I didn't do the minor, and that's maybe a story, another question might surface, but I ended up starting Viv Labs with 2 co-founders, and that was to take the assistant and make it a new interaction paradigm that would impact everyone in an important way. It will have global impact, every connected user, every connected business. And so we sold it to Samsung. They have a footprint of 1 billion devices. We've opened up developer tools. So if any of you are coders, go to bigsbydevelopers.com. You can download the coolest development environment you've ever imagined. It is unlike anything you've seen because an AI will write most of the code with you and for you. No other software environments like this. And the whole idea is to turn the assistant into something as important as the web or mobile. So that's my current paradigm, global impact. Thank you.
Cool. Can you, I guess what I'm trying to figure out, so what you intend for the Viv Labs and the new version, is it all announced in public, or is there we have to wait before we really understand how it'll change the world?
I haven't been keeping any secrets from anyone, so my first version of, the first version of an assistant was in 1993. Before I ever saw a web browser. My first web browser, Mosaic, was in 1994. And I said, someday there will be computers around the world, and we're going to want to access content and services from those computers. And we'll need a way to discover them and to interact with them. And the idea of using hyperlinked multimedia documents to do that never occurred to me. I thought you'd have an assistant that you could talk to and say, I want to know this, I want to do this. It would break it down into subtasks, route it to the right computers, aggregate the results, interact with the user, learn from those interactions, and help the user get the job done. So that was the original vision 26 years now ago, and I've been trying onwards ever since to make this come true. So it's not yet in the market, which is maybe so announced. I've been very public with what this is it's supposed to be. It really is the assistant as the next internet. I think we're on the cusp of it, kind of like 1994 web, in that we have an assistant called, they're putting it under the Bigsby brand. They had a Bigsby one which was not Viv powered. We are replacing it. So it's rolling out now to phones, TVs, refrigerators, and a gazillion more devices. So that is coming this year. It's out on a few devices, the Note 9, and starting to backport to other Samsung devices. We launched in November the tools, so any developer can now use this radical development environment to build, we call them capsules. Think of them as a knowledge capsule that can be discovered by users and inserted into their Bigsby. And we will be opening this summer a marketplace. So today developers are already starting to submit for approval, like an app, their capsules into a marketplace, but users don't see them yet. So once the store has enough, the marketplace has enough capsules in it, we'll open it, and you'll start to see an assistant as web experience, as a paradigm.
Yeah, like an ecosystem of.
It's an
of
ecosystem,
yeah.
but it's kind of like the web in early days. I think it'll be 2 or 3 years before it becomes mature. There are other competitors in the space, obviously, Amazon with Alexa, Google, Siri, etc. Today, what they've done is not scalable. None of it's an ecosystem, which is why I could say, I'm going to take away your Alexa or your this, and you'll be like, your Siri. And if we can, I'm not going to go into it now, but I think there are certain things that need to be done to make this a scalable ecosystem like the web, like mobile, that current providers are not doing. And we're trying to be a leader in that space, and maybe we will, maybe we won't. But that's the goal. So I would say it's my prediction of where is technology going in the next few years. This could be a really big change where the assistant goes from cute and useful to, I use it for everything. Because today people use it for 2 or 3 things only.
Did you watch Her, the movie?
I did. I'll tell you a little story about that, very personal. So I'm watching the movie. I told this to Spike Jones, actually, who was the director for the movie. I'm watching the movie, and it's kind of like watching a magic trick. When I watch a magic trick, I can't turn off my engineering brain. I'm like, how does that work? What's he doing? What's it right? So I'm watching the movie. Every word that came out of her mouth, I'm trying to reverse engineer. And, I see what's going on. Okay, I should do that. I'm trying to figure out how it works. I just couldn't help. I couldn't stop it until there was one line in the movie, which I'm sure no one else noticed, but it was mind-blowing for me. So the protagonist says, good night. I think her name's Samantha, and she goes, good night. Could I watch you sleep? And immediately my engineering mind goes, there is no informational content that can be derived from observing a prone human just lying there. The only possible motivation could be emotional attachment. And then I'm like, I don't know how to do that. And then it went pop, and the whole engineering thing turned off, and I just enjoyed the rest of the movie. But for the first half of the movie, it was so distracting.
So halfway through, you discovered it's actually a movie. Okay. All right, good. All right, any more questions? What do you think? All right, if they don't have one, then I'm going to ask you a final one. I have no idea about the time, but I think I think the question that I would like to know is, what are you trying to learn now?
So I feel like I have so much left to learn. At work, you're all about engineering leadership, and I'm still trying to learn what's the best way to do engineering leadership, especially at a big company. I feel like my sweet spot was in the early days up through about 20 people when you can all fit in a conference room and you have kind of messy roles. Once you have a big company with lots of groups, trying to get them all working together without things falling between the cracks of their defined roles is a challenge for me. And I feel like in a startup I know how to do that. In a big company, I haven't quite figured that out. So I'm trying, and I've been at Apple, I've been at Samsung, so I'm trying to learn how to be a better engineering leader. I think that's one thing I'm learning. Another is,
we're going to make you take the class.
I would love to. I was just listening to your talk, and I'm like, I'm learning all sorts of things. And I had opinions about lots of things.
Actually, I could suggest some people you could talk to. Yeah, I mean, You know who you could talk to? Do you know Mike Olson,
I do not.
founder of Cloudera? I should arrange somehow for you to talk to him. But there's a few people out there who I think have some really good ideas about how to get past the small company leadership to run the bigger company.
So that's something that I feel I could certainly be better at. And then the second answer, quick answer is, I think it's important to have joy in your life as well, and a hobby, etc. So magic, as Vicky mentioned, has been kind of this, little blossoming passion on the side. My wife will roll her eyes and tell you that I spend way too much time watching it, learning it, creating it.
What do you think of David Copperfield?
He's a friend of mine, so I can call him up and ask him that question.
Wow.
He's actually, I'd say he's one of the people who reminds me the most of Steve Jobs, which is kind of surprising, perhaps.
Yeah.
And both Steve and David are obsessed with winning. And when I first met Steve Jobs, after the day he called us and said, come over to my house, I'm like, man, this guy's a billionaire. David, by the way, is the single highest grossing performer of any kind. Music, movies, anything. He's earned many billions of dollars. He owns a chain of 11 islands in the Caribbean called Copperfield Bay, right? Like, he's achieved, as Steve Jobs has. Steve Jobs reinvented not only computing, but movies, music, mobile computing, and maybe AI with Siri. But when I first met Steve, there was nothing relaxed about him. He was desperate to win from day one. Man, he's achieved so much. He could just chill. So I would say they're both driven. They have little interpersonal kind of things. They're not quite, you were talking about empathy and the emotional IQ. They're not super far to the right on your curve there. I think they should take your class, both of them.
Wait, who should? Who's
Steve Jobs and David Copperfield are high performers.
Yeah.
And on the emotional quotient of
that's
interacting with people,
yeah,
they're not that far to the right. I'll just say that. And
I'm shocked actually. I'm thinking that
they're both some of the greatest communicators of all time. They know how to tell a story, which is an incredibly important component to leadership,
right?
To motivating. They can, in fact, both of them can tell a story. You always talked about Steve Jobs, halo effect, and Copperfield has exactly that, right? Man, no one tells a story like these two guys, but I'm talking more on the interpersonal, the connection, the emotional connection, the caring, the and taking the time to connect.
This is such a bad lesson.
I know.
Oh, God.
I'm sorry. You asked me, what do I think of him? I think he's the most like Steve Jobs of anyone I've met, and that's kind of interesting.
So if you're a really good storyteller and you have no empathy with anyone, but you're a high performer, you can still do amazing things. That's kind of the lesson. Just strike that from your mind. You didn't hear it here.
Sorry.
If you come to that conclusion on your own, it's okay.
Well, I think they both could be stronger at what they do if they moved a little bit more to the right.
All right. So let me just say that you are the first magician and technologist combination that we've ever had speak. It's like really great to be. Thank you actually for coming all the way. Actually, you're in Oakland. Okay. Thank you.
I drove from San Jose, so there's some.
Thank you for coming all the way. Okay. All right. Take that back. All right. So, no, really, actually, really enjoyed your perspective, and for making kind of for our final day of this program, like unique. It's like it's like a new set of ideas that we haven't really talked about before. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, I make it all up. It may or may not be right.